A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope covers everyone who is joining from whichever location you are. So in this video, I'm gonna share my interview experience, which happened very recently, and how I cracked it. Okay. I had to create this video in several parts because if I had clubbed all the questions in a single video, it would have become a very thick and very long. So I didn't want it to bore you. And obviously, if you're watching a long video, you start losing interest after some time. So in the interest of time, I have created the same, the entire question I basically have divided in different parts. So there are a couple of more parts most probably will be coming because the interview happened in different, rounds. So let me start. Yeah. So, but before starting, let me explain. Let me introduce basically myself. I am a .NET full stack developer. I've got 8 years of industry experience. In this 8 years, I've worked with service and product both kind of company. So I've got significant amount of experience how to crack this interview ball game. um, how I do basically whenever I'm in an interview, I don't copy paste answers from textbooks or documents or nowhere. Basically, I create my own answer, and that's exactly what I would suggest you guys as well. That whatever you have experience, try to answer in that way. Don't try to copy paste somebody else's answer because that'll look fake, and you might get into trouble, and you might get into a lot of cross questioning. So let's start. The first question they ask, which is very obvious, is what's the difference between .NET and .NET Core? .NET Core is basically the new .NET, right? Uh, Whenever somebody asks you any question, think in a way that what problem has been solved. Because we know we're not just developer, we are engineer, and engineers, who are they? They are the one who solves business problem, right? Whenever we get a business requirement, what we do, we try to solve it, right? And we solve it sprint after sprint, isn't it? So yeah, so that's exactly how I think about it, and that's my way of answering any question. So the question was what uh, the question was like basically what are the features of .NET Core. So I started with .NET Core basically is the cross-platform, and that's exactly the problem was there with .NET Framework, that it was a Windows-only platform. So that's why Java and other language you see excelled largely because .NET lacked in those times. And I was very fortunate that by the time I came into the industry in 2018, .NET Core started getting popularity. So the first answer was that cross-platform. And how does this being achieved? Through CLI support, right? CLI support is also very important because that's exactly what made it .NET to work on cross-platform. Performance also got increased largely because a lot of people say .NET Core is high performance. Do you know the basic reason, the real reason why .NET is a very high performance? Because the libraries has been split. Earlier, so just take an example of collection library. It was so thick. Now it has been split in different, layers. So whichever layer you are calling, that is only gonna be called. Not the entire library you have to import. So that's why it is very high performant. It got support of built-in dependency injection. What is dependency injection? I'll come to that. So it got built-in support. All you need to do is to register your dependency in the DI container and simply have inject it. Mostly we do it with the constructor dependency, and obviously it's a cloud ready thing. Yeah. Just with few commands or few clicks, you can literally deploy your application very easily without thinking too much. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Yeah, the next question was polymorphism. How many types of it? So there are two types of polymorphism, obviously, compile time and runtime. What is compile time? Compile time polymorphism is something where we already know which method is going to be invoked, which version of the method is going to be invoked. We do it through method overloading. In the comment section, can you please let me know how many ways we can achieve method overloading? On the other hand, there is runtime polymorphism. Runtime polymorphism basically invoke the method or the version of that method at run. So compiler doesn't know which method I'm gonna invoke. It will be decided at the runtime. So the best way I have learned through my experience to explain runtime polymorphism is it's the ability of base class object reference variable to point to different child class method at runtime. That's all. This one simple line, best way to explain it. How we achieve it? We make the base class. We make the method virtual and we simply override it. And the override then method will be invoked with you override it. And there are different flavors of this question which I might cover in different video, but not today. So simply the question was compile time versus runtime, which I explained. What is this dependency injection? Here comes the main question. Again, it's a very you know repeated question. In every interview, you'll see this question. So dependency injection helps us achieve inversion of control. At the same time, it also helps us achieve single responsibility principle. We don't want a class to create instances. I beg your pardon. We don't want any class to create all the required things for himself, by its own. We want to inject it. We want to make our class very thin, very plain, very simple. We don't want to overload a lot of responsibility to that class. So how we achieve that? As I said, we have to register our dependency on the DI container, and through constructor dependency injection, we will achieve that. Okay, it helps testability. Obviously, since the class is very thin, testability improves, genuinely improves. It's not just for the sake of saying. Then dependent objects are being injected from outside, so class is very thin, lightweight, and it also helps us achieve the better maintainability. Okay, so it's also a preferred method in .NET Core. The most used one is constructor injection. Also, we can achieve the property injection as well, you know, but the best and most commonly used is constructor injection. And then I got a SQL query question. I think this is also a very common question. Like, can you find the second highest salary? So I simply wrote this query. But you can use CTE as well and dense rank as well. You can find different resource. Else, I'll make a separate video, or I'll post it on the LinkedIn. So you can join. We can connect through LinkedIn as well, so that we discuss all this. Different thing. Yes. So yeah. So next question was, how do we solve a slow running query problem? So there are different ways. If you have used SQL Server or whichever tool, there's something execution plan you can see in the SQL tool. This is one of the question which genuinely required special attention. So I will create a separate video on this, how we actually do this, and this is really achievable. It's not just copy paste answer. It can be achieved through execution plan. First of all, we have to see where exactly the bottleneck in terms of slowness. Then we can do few things which will eventually optimize our query. We have to we don't have to over index things. Use indexing wisely. Whenever you are running a select query, don't avoid using select star. Okay, uh, use those columns which you really need. Avoid others. Optimize joining. Uh, I'll try to make a separate video how we actually achieve this, because it's a very important question and it keeps on coming in almost every interview, I can tell you. Then yeah, this is also related to dependency injection, that how many ways we can register the services. So there are three basic ways we can achieve it. One is through singleton, one is scope, one is transient. This question can be come in different flavors, right? What is singleton? What is scope? What is transient? So singleton is basically what? Only one instance throughout the application lifecycle will be used. Okay. On that singleton object will be shared across all the uh, everywhere basically, as long as the application is running. Scoped is what? Whenever you log in and till the time you log out, that one instance will be there, and subsequent request will be shared all across. And transient is even very interesting. Whenever you request, it will keep on giving you new instances. Okay. So scoped is someone which is used whenever we are talking to database, you know, because there will be one database connection we want. We don't want to, keep on disconnecting and connecting. And that's exactly the reason you must have used this, the scoped one. But this is also a very important question, comes with different flavor. So make sure you understand this carefully. Yeah. So let me give you a very small, not just advice I would say, but one request I would give to everyone who is gonna give any interview, who has got upcoming interviews, that try to substantiate your answer with the real example, what you have worked on, and how you achieved it, or how you solved that problem. So interviewer will not keep on cross questioning that when have you used this, how have you used this. If you yourself are gonna give it, then that negativity goes away. That there won't be a question in interviewer's mind that is he just answering or has he literally worked on it. So that's a very important advice I would say. Okay. Whenever you are unsure of answering any question, just simply say that currently I'm not able to recall it, but I'll definitely have a look and come back to you. That's all. Nothing else. And move on. Okay. And try to cover the important or essential, flavor of that answer first, and then go into different shapes that, okay, this helps achieve this as well. But start with the most important one. Okay. What is the fundamental feature of .NET Core? Just simply say cross-platform, CLI support, DI support, built-in DI support, and so on. So that will really help you, whenever you are in an interview, whenever you are trying to prove yourself that you're the right fit. These things will definitely gonna help you. And then the question came like, what is the difference between monolithic and microservices architecture? I just simply have explained you the basics, but I can assure you that I'll create a separate video where I'll create a small microservice and I'll show you how, different communication and everything happen. But just to simplify, monolithic is basically where all the dependencies are injected in a single frame. Okay, whether it's database, whether it's view, whether it's modules, all the modules are clubbed in a single one, single. Okay, but in microservices, we create separate services. Let's say there is a login service, then there is a registration service, then there is an ordering service, then there is a card service. I'm just taking an example of e-commerce website. So what happens is that all the services are very lightweight and doing independent thing. There are some downsides of microservice as well, but there are some really good architectural problem which it literally solves. So when they ask, then when would you use microservices? You simply say it totally depends on the requirement. We don't have to use microservice all the time. Okay. We will use it when we are building a very large application which has got a lot of features. Then it makes sense to divide, different component in a different microservices, because it requires a lot of tools as well. The communication is synchronous, asynchronous. So it is slightly tricky. Not all application deserves to be worked with microservices. We can use monolithic as well. Okay, but both has got different use cases. We cannot convert all my monolithic application to microservices just for the sake it's a new technology. Okay, so you can answer this in this way. Okay, now yeah, he asked like how two different services gonna interact with each other within a microservices. So as I said, I will create a separate video because this video, this topic genuinely deserves a separate video where I will be showing you uh, each and every steps how we achieve this. But just for answering, there are two ways we can communicate in different different services within a microservice. One is synchronous one, which we use through HTTP based, easy to implement and very but slow, obviously. And then through gRPC. On synchronous way, we have to use some tool. Okay, we have got to use message queue, like RabbitMQ or Kafka, and it's event driven. Whenever a event happens, then based on that event, some other microservices will be called or hit. Then there is a API gateway pattern where one service, the responsibility when where we will create a gateway, basically API gateway. Its responsibility is to redirect to different service, whichever is being called. So that's how we can achieve the communication between different microservices. But I can assure you, I'll give you a separate video where I explain this in much detail. Yeah. So then the question came regarding authentication. How are different ways of authenticating a user? We cannot allow obviously every user to log into our application. So how many ways we can achieve that, or how are different mechanism available in order to achieve that? So obviously JWT token based authentication, which is the most popular one. Then there is a OAuth 2.0, then OpenID Connect, and then there is a cookie based application. OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect are actually club. So, and this is also one of the question. I'm really sorry. There are a lot of questions which are so deep, which genuinely deserves a separate video. So I'll come up with a separate video on this as well, where I'll show you that how we can make use of OAuth framework with OpenID. You know, that basically helps us achieve the authentication. And usually we use you might have heard of Okta and all. That is basically helps us achieve this. So I'll explain you in a separate video how we achieve this. This is a really important question, and interview can literally grill you on this, which I got to frankly speaking. I'll explain in a separate video. And from SQL side, there was another question. What is the difference between store procedure and function? So obviously, store procedure you have to understand is a separate, uh, you know, what we can say. It's a mini batch kind of thing. It allows to do everything: insertion, updation, deletion. You know, it has got all the capabilities. It doesn't have to return any value. Let's say you have a query and you want to run that query on a certain situation. Store procedure is the best way to use. Okay. It can't be used within a select statement. That's a very important. As I said, it's a complete mini batch kind of. It is sort of an application within an application of SQL. Okay, so it supports transaction management as well, and can call the function as well. So what is function? Function is exactly very similar to what we have in .NET or Java, where that it cannot perform any DML. It has to return a value. Okay, it could be used within a select statement, and it can't call store procedure. So because obviously store procedure, as I said, it's a mini batch kind of thing, which can't be called from simply a function. So functions are deterministic, that you will definitely want to get a value. Procedures are operational, basically. It operates on different situation. Okay. Now, yeah. Uh, this is also a very common question, like temporary table and CTE. Okay. Temporary table is physical. You can literally go and see that. Okay. Can be referenced multiple times in same session. It has got no issues. It supports indexing, and also large data sets is allowed. But on the other hand, CT is simply kind of a magic table. Also, you might have heard of. It's very close to that. I'll explain. Magic table is slightly different from this. So it has got kind of in memory sort of thing here. So its scope is of single execution. So whenever, as long as that particular query is running, its scope is allowed. The moment you move, the scope is lost, basically. Okay, it can't be indexed, obviously. It is simply used. I mean, I personally have used it to simplify the query. Just kind of we basically create. I mean, if you see the syntax of city, it basically is kind of creating a variable and storing it, and that variable kind of being used within that query, nothing else. Okay, Now, yeah, so city is largely for readability, and temp table we create for performance. It is a real physical stored table within our DB. Then what are the different ways we can achieve the exception handling in .NET? So obviously try catch is the most common one. It has been there all along. Then we can use middlewares. Middleware question was there, but I think I'm not, able to cover it in this part. But I will definitely cover in the second part because this question came, explain the middleware and how the data flows through, what are the different kind of middleware we use in program.cs file. So we have a middleware which can be used as a global exception handling. Then logging obviously is one of the way where we can log, and that is also there's a what we say there's also a logging middleware which can help us to achieve that. Okay. Now in .NET Core, what is the use of use versus run? So what use does is it has got next parameter which helps us to call the next middleware in the pipeline, where run is the last one. Okay, whenever we are using app.run, it is the last one. After that, middleware pipeline will be broken and application will move on. But use is the one which helps us to call the next one. And there is also one math which basically helps us break the chain of middleware execution. That is also very common use case. You can read more about it, but this much is fine, that use keyword basically, or use method. It is basically, an extension method which helps us to call the next middleware in the pipeline. And run is the one which helps us terminate the application. Sorry, not the application. It basically helps us to terminate the application middleware pipeline. This is really very interesting, and most of the interview depends on this question. Frankly speaking, in any C# interview, what is the difference between singleton and static class? So see, let me clarify this very clearly. I don't know why this question comes so much time and almost in every interview, but since it comes, we have to respect and we have to answer this right. So static basically is just a keyword. Okay, static is a keyword which helps us, to create one instance, one global instance, and that is going to be shared all across. But thing is, static belongs to the type itself, where it has been defined. Okay, it can't be modified. If you modify that, the the modification is going to happen everywhere. Okay. On the other hand, singleton is basically a design pattern. It has got everything. It is no. It's not just that it helps us achieve a single instance through the application lifecycle. It has got so many things. You know, the reason this comparison comes is because of that keyword one instance thing. But let me declutter this. Why, you know, singleton is very different. So singleton is the is a design pattern which has got a lot of other things. It has got lazy loading, it has got thread safety, it has got encapsulation, it has got safe iteration through IEnumerable, right? But on the static side, it's just a keyword which belongs to the type where it is defined, nothing else. Okay. This is a single shared copy which is shared all across the application. And static keyword is very useful when we are creating an extension method. I will create a separate video on that as well. That how we create an extension method and why it's very useful. And there is also one of the very most common interview question. Then yeah, I mean, if the static object is just naked, then it can't be. It can be tempered by anyone. Okay, there's no thread safety. There is no null check. Nothing. It can be literally overridden by anyone, anywhere. Okay, but Singleton has got a lot of other things like thread safety, safe iteration through enumerable, as I said, lazy loading, encapsulation, everything. Okay. So basically, Singleton is a protective wrapper, you can say, that controls and safeguard global access. Okay. As I said, you can temper the static variable, okay, object, but in Singleton you cannot, because it has got thread safety. You know, we use lock keyword and all these things with Singleton. So Singleton is a architecture pattern. Yeah, as I was mentioning, like lady routing plus thread safety comes with Singleton class. Yeah. Also encapsulation and safe iteration. Okay, whether and that's where you can't provide null or something, because while iterating, it will do the null check as well. And if that thread is already occupied, it will not allow anybody else to uh, capture that thread. Yeah. So yeah, here I have classified all the differences. You can have a look, and then the interviewer moved on to Angular. So there were a few questions which was asked in Angular side on Angular side. So first question was, what is Angular component architecture? What is Angular, component is made up of? So if you worked on Angular, you will see there's a .ts file, then there's .css file, then .test file, and then there is a .html file. So HTML represents the template, how the UI gonna look like, and .ts file is where we write the logic, okay, business logic basically. So it is made up of all these four things. Every component is made up of all this. Okay. Um, yeah. And then he has like, what is input and output used for? They're basically decorators. Okay. Input and output decorators. So input is useful when we want to pass data from parent to child. And whenever a event is gonna emit from child to parent, we use output. Okay. So basically, when parent is sending something to child, it will be as an input. And when child is trying to pass anything to the parent, it will be called output. It can be achieved through, it will be achieved through output decorator. Okay. Mm. Yeah. Now the next question was, what is the difference between components versus module? Component basically is a building block of any UI. Okay. Whether it's header, footer, login page, anything, everything in Angular is component. Okay. Model is the logical grouping of those components. That's the core idea, and you can extend this to other things which I've mentioned as well. Okay. Then, what is the purpose of ng on init? It's a very important method. You know, whenever the instance of a component is created, the first thing is constructor is called, and constructor is responsible for getting the component ready to be used. Whatever the business logic we are going to use, constructor helps us to get the component ready for that. And that's the most important use case I have personally used in the project and otherwise is we inject the dependencies which that particular component is going to use, the class component. So that's exactly where constructor comes in. Then component gets initialized, and the second thing which we are going to use is ng on it, and that's exactly the component is now ready for all the business logic and whatever you wanna use it. So the purpose of ng on init used to write the business logic through all the dependencies which has been injected by the constructor, and then once logic is done, then you whatever data you want to send to the template, you send it, and then view is rendered. You can see the how we basically use syntax of ng on init. And yeah, this is also very important, question in Angular, that can you explain Angular component lifecycle? So as I was saying that it starts with constructor, then it goes to ng on init, ng to check, ng after content init, and so on. So the first thing is constructor, where all the dependency and all will be ready. When ng on it is the one which is going to use that dependency, and do all the business logic, calling the API, writing the logic, assessing any input property if it is coming from parent. All these things are being done through ng on it. And there's a very long sequence of this one, the component lifecycle. Like it start with ng on it, component ng on it, ng do check, ng after content init, ng view, and so on. I'm not able to recall right now, but these are 7 8 lifecycle hooks. If you know, please comment it down. Then what is Angular interceptor? And the interceptor basically intercepts any request and response. So whenever a request is going, intercepts basically request, on any outgoing request, it will add header, token, modify request data. So whatever we want to use, we will be doing it with the use of interceptor. While getting the response, uh, it basically handle any error check. If we want to, transform the data through pipe or something, we can use that. We can log the activity, what response we have got. All this is being used by interceptor. This is also one of the very common interview question. I will show you in a separate video how we actually use an Angular interceptor. Okay, so I'm really sorry. It must be a long video for you, but round two interview experience is also coming, where I think again I'll be covering 15-20 questions, and then round three that will cover both, interview round one and round two uh, with Capgemini. Okay, so please subscribe the channel and be ready for those two rounds. Okay, if anything, please let me know. I will try to help as much as possible. If any interviews coming, please do reach out to me. I will try to refer somewhere if I can. Okay. So yeah, guys, thank you very much. Let's meet in the next video and discuss more questions around .NET, Angular, maybe Azure question also, because he has a lot of Azure question as well. Those things are gonna come. So till then, please like and subscribe. Add some nice comment. We'll connect in the second video, second part of the same interview series with Capgemini. Thank you very much.